Hello, this is a recording of a live session from Spark 2021. We hope you enjoy it.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 3 of Spark Ignite 2021. My name's Bronwyn Alsop, and I'll be your host for the conference today. Coming up, we have a schedule of future-focused sessions delivering expert insight, which should hopefully be very thought-provoking for all of us. We have a session on sustainability, digital connectivity, and attracting and retaining young talent in Warwick District. But first up, a very important session on placemaking, led by Steph Kerr from Leamington Bid, coming to us all the way from New Zealand. Hi, Steph.
Hi, everyone. So, shall I kick this off? Morning, everyone, and welcome to our session on placemaking, lifting the lid in places. My name is Stephanie Kerr, and I'm the Executive Director of Bid Leamington, and it is my pleasure to introduce our contributors to you today. Following a brief introduction to placemaking from myself, you'll first hear from Romy Rawlings. Romy is the Commercial Director of Vestra, a Nordic furniture company with a difference. Following that, we're going to hear from Geraldine Collinge from the Royal Shakespeare Company. The RSC needs little introducing, but her fascinating role as Director of Creative Placemaking and Public Programs does. And finally, we'll hear from Martina Bassi, who is the Founder and Director of Creative Leamington, a CIC, a local CIC, making a big difference. At the end of our session, we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts, and we're happy to take questions. These will be chaired by Bronwyn, who I also thank for her support. I hope you'll find this session interesting, thought-provoking, and inspiring. You also may find aspects of it a little heart-wrenching, as we are still in lockdown and looking forward to a path out. This pause is giving us a chance to consider what we miss, what we want to keep, what we think needs to change in our places, and how we go about achieving this. So it provides a helpful context to our discussion today. So with this in mind, I'm going to briefly introduce my take on placemaking. There's our first slide. Once upon a time, they say elephants used to walk through the streets of Leamington Spa. These elephants were brought to us by a chap named Samuel Lockhart, a circus owner, who I like to think was a little bit quirky. And of course, the story of these elephants with its truths and uncertainties caught on. So to this day, they are referenced locally in sculpture, art, and businesses, gin, beer, and bread, and books and online, marching into the narrative and modern identity of our town. And in the past, the parade had a tram running up it. Shops had awnings to shade shoppers and to shade and protect shoppers. We travelled by horse, and at times you could find chairs surrounding the bandstands and music playing. Not only does this reflect past placemaking efforts, narratives, and histories, but it offers insight and inspiration and shows us our places are constantly changing and evolving to meet the needs of local communities. And as we fast forward to current times, the urban context has become increasingly complex as socioeconomic, political, public health, and environmental forces interact with local consequences. We're being confronted with new realities, exciting development opportunities, and new challenges. And as these images show, even before COVID, a wide range of actors were addressing local challenges, investing locally, and delivering activities such as regeneration, cultural events, environmental and homeless campaigns, and more. And all of this contributes to local placemaking. So what can this concept help us with going forwards? The concept of placemaking has been around since the 1960s, and it's been evolving since, so it's a little messy. It's an idea, a theory, a process, approach, and a movement. In practice, placemaking reflects a shift towards engaging the community voice in the making of places. As a process, it involves enabling the community to come together and reimagine and reinvent places. The idea is that this will strengthen the connection between people and place and increase the capacity and the capability of people to forge identity, belonging, and meaning. In placemaking, the place is the focus of decision-making and everyone is the expert, and it actively facilitates creative uses and community-led approaches. So among other things, it is inclusive, collaborative, and flexible. Sometimes it's easier to recognize placemaking by the tools it uses. These might be very tangible physical interventions such as buildings, architecture, and street art, to less tangible things such as events, place names, images, myths, and histories, which all contribute to our perception of place. Placemaking is also reflected in town planning and institutional arrangements and processes, as well as everyday routines. It can also involve creating more community-minded systems, flexible policies, and innovative incentive schemes. Ultimately, placemaking reflects the idea that great places are designed with people in mind and people involved. And to do this, we need to think carefully about how they are used, what they feel like, and how they support the lives of the communities within them. So who does placemaking? Well, unsurprisingly, it is everybody, through daily activity, buildings, investment, art, and more. Accordingly, our places are the product of our individual and collective actions, interactions, and imaginations, and are in a constant state of negotiation and change. A key distinction in placemaking is between deliverable conscious placemaking and the unconscious actions that contribute to place. So as well as urban planners, place managers, artists, and activists being placemakers, it is everyday people in our community, which is brilliant, but also sometimes it's not always easy. Placemaking is done in all sorts of ways. This might be from grassroots, community level placemaking to being government or developer led. There's a variety of terms used to describe different approaches to placemaking as well. Standard placemaking reflects the incremental changes we see in places. Strategic placemaking might be a master planning or design-led approach. Creative placemaking embraces the arts and creativity, and tactical placemaking might be more experimental and quite oftentimes temporary. And as we move forward and tackle challenges such as climate change, we're seeing the idea of sustainable placemaking take root, which is experimenting with behavioural change. Accordingly, placemaking is resourced in any way possible, from government funded to crowd-funded. And importantly, it should always involve people and be done with care and kindness, openness and bravery. And these days, there are a variety of digital tools and social media that can be used to help support it. A constant thread running through placemaking is the use of art and creativity. So I wanted to zoom in on this, as this is an aspect of placemaking that I absolutely love. Creativity can change the dynamic completely. It has the power to support community engagement, social justice, and create fun-friendly environments. I feel there's an opportunity to embrace creativity in terms of how we conceive projects, but also in terms of how we make decisions and deliver them. In my experience, I know you have to be brave and you have to make brave decisions. Some things I've implemented have left me feeling sick with nervousness, but it's almost always exciting, invigorating, and addictive. And I've also learned that the community will always take your ideas a little further in a way you don't always expect. As placemakers, we drop the breadcrumbs, and that is the magic. And there are so many inspiring examples. Interventions can be large scale, like the silo art by Geoffrey Caron, which is part of an incredible trail in Victoria, Australia. Or it can be small scale creations to discover by accident, created by anyone in our community. Interventions can also be a form of tactical urbanism, like this urban prototyping in Riga, Latvia. This is a cheap, fast, and reliable way to test new uses in the urban environment and gain valuable feedback. It allows for collective imagining and enables everybody to feel a space and see how it functions and discover the magic that the community brings as it adapts it. This was in place for 5 days and is featured in a fascinating TED Talk, which is referenced in some links at the end of this session. Other forms of placemaking can reuse old infrastructure or are just a mix of fun and functional. Entertainment also plays a large role. This is Foundry Wood in Leamington, a place that makes a huge contribution to the town. And these next 2 slides remind me of Spencer's Yard in Leamington. Outdoor theatre and dance is already happening there, and it would be absolutely wonderful to see this happening an awful lot more. And of course, fun can be brought right onto our high streets. Netflix has reinvigorated our collective interest in chess. So what about a game this summer, right in the heart of town? Game and play is not just for children. And the possibilities of creative placemaking are endless. We just have to keep imagining. So just to finish off, I wanted to cover a few things that I've learned are important when delivering placemaking activities over the years, and consider the kind of support that's needed as well. This is by no means exhaustive, but some thoughts and observations I've made. Firstly, doing the groundwork for any project is very important. It's often overlooked and rushed, but it will always pay off later. You need to listen deeply to a place and its people. This means undertaking research and analysis and observing closely how a place functions. This diagram in the slide has been borrowed from the Project for Public Places Handbook and highlights attributes that make great places alongside measures such as baseline demographic and transport data. It's also important to speak to the community, to understand local knowledge, perceptions, and history. This can also help us develop ideas and tap into collective imaginations. How you go about doing this is also really important too. I often think of this as lifting the lid off a bottle of fizz. Think of the bubbles coming up as ideas and energy bubbling up. And as placemakers, we can tap into that and help people realize their ideas and ambitions. From a town and citywide level, developing a vision for an area will provide a collective roadmap of where a place is heading, what people can expect, and how they can contribute. This should be a living document that is co-created with the community it serves, so it becomes broadly owned and supported and is able to be reviewed over time. Planned and future developments and activities should be listed alongside plans, details of how plans will improve quality of life and make a place people want to be. And it should be inspiring and something that people are proud of. It is also very helpful in terms of opening up conversations about place, and once agreed, helping decision makers determine what to support and where to focus time and investment. And alongside the many positives of placemaking, there are also a few things we need to keep in mind, as placemaking is often an inherently political process. For example, the act of naming a place can be political, as seen here in New Zealand, where communities are reverting back to using Indigenous names for places as they confront our colonial past. Also, individuals and groups have their own worldviews. So as places change, you can see these views contested. For example, the desire to attract more tourists and commodify a place may not appeal to existing or Indigenous inhabitants. Timing and geography can also create tensions, so we mustn't forget that interventions do not always have to be permanent. Temporary and experimental uses are a great way to test ideas. And the idea of permission is interesting, as contests can arise around who decides and what is appropriate, such as when communities challenge planning decisions or the appropriateness or permanence of monuments. Equally, we need to think hard about how we gain the consent of the community for different kinds of projects. That also can be a creative and fun process. A common critique of placemaking is that it can result in gentrification, resulting in places becoming unaffordable or uninviting. So further questions I always ask is, whose place is this? Which people do we want to gather, visit, and live in these vibrant places? And is everybody welcome? At worst, placemaking can also be purely, if it's purely commercially motivated, can even result in homogenization and sameness of places. These debates recognize that all forms of placemaking reflect individual and collective values. And with this intentionality, there should be an awareness of the consequences of planned change. Reflecting this, it's worth considering the kinds of values that you wish to collectively agree when delivering placemaking projects. Challenge yourself to look at things from a variety of perspectives, recognize power relations, consider how to mitigate issues, weigh up the positive and negative impacts in the short and long term. Here is a list of the sorts of things that you could consider. Things like addressing inclusion and diversity or environmental considerations will deeply influence how a project is delivered. And finally, perhaps my most important top tip is to continually check back with the community, invite them to help us. There is a huge amount of passion and expertise in our community. We just need to lift the lid. There has never been a more important time to be working together to address division and rebuild our communities. Also, resources are tight, so collective efforts to fund and deliver projects will be required. People have fantastic ideas, but they can quickly run into barriers and get disheartened. So a really important question for us today is, have we got the right policy, toolkits, decision-making and support networks in place? Or are policies and approaches inadvertently excluding placemaking? The reason I have an image of pocket parks up here is this is something I've been trying to get permission to deliver in Leamington for some time now, nearly a year. So even with experience, placemaking is hard and we run into barriers. So we need to make sure that those with the energy and ideas are supported with things like local toolkits, risk assessment templates, decision makers who say, yes, let's try, before no, well, that's an awesome idea. How can I help? So reflecting this, I want to urge us all to keep asking, how can we work together to seed and support placemaking in our communities? Let's keep dreaming, imagining, and doing. So thank you. And now I'm going to pass on to our next contributor, Romy, who's going to give us a different perspective on placemaking from Vestra. So over to you, Romy.
Thanks, Steph. Thank you. That was brilliant. I'm glad I didn't look at your slides before, actually, because that was a really good introduction. So just as a little bit of background, I won't dwell on my company or the sort of commercial angle, but thank you for inviting me to the conversation today. I'm just going to bring a bit of an international perspective to placemaking and speak really from a particularly Scandinavian position, because I work for a Norwegian manufacturer of outdoor furniture, and I think we have a unique perspective on this subject because of that background. I'm also a landscape architect, although I haven't practiced probably in about 15 years. I've been working with landscape suppliers of materials mostly, but I do personally have a designer's approach to the subject, I guess. So I'm picking up on just a few points that Steph made earlier. But what I'd really like to talk about is these values in relation to people. I actually started counting the number of times you mentioned people, Steph, and then gave up because it was pointless. But for me and for us, placemaking comes back to people every single time. So, you know, it's those values that give people the sort of places that they want and need, particularly as you mentioned these days, partly post-COVID, but partly with the current climate emergency. And these values are vitally important to us at Vestra in everything that we do, and they steer the way that we approach our business and the projects that we choose to collaborate on with our clients and designers. We work across public and private sector projects in many, many places, in high streets, in towns and city spaces, university campuses and sustainable transport infrastructure, for example, active travel, those sorts of projects. And they're truly global. I have colleagues in Norway, in Sweden, in Germany, in New York and Los Angeles now, and we're officially based in London, although I live in the Midlands and grew up in Leamington. so know a little bit about the area. And so our projects are truly global, as you can imagine, and the breadth of approaches that we get involved in are vast, but again, in every single instance, it always comes back to people. So diversity is very important to us. Steph mentioned representation and current issues around naming places and all sorts of aspects. I mean, I've got 10 minutes today and I can't go into obviously an enormous amount of detail in this subject, but just to spark some thoughts, I guess, and get you thinking about your approach to placemaking, what you want to see, what you can do. It depends on whether you're coming from a local background or a professional background. It really doesn't matter. Everybody has some input to make in these points. So as you're no doubt aware, globalization is making the world ever smaller. Maybe not now when we can't travel anywhere, but hopefully when things return. People are moving across national borders more and more than ever before. And some of them choose to do that, obviously, but others because they don't have any choice. And as our population increases and people move to this extent, we've got to learn to start to share with each other, both space and resources in our towns and cities, more equitably than we do today. In many places, we see a worrying trend in increased conflicts between people of different ethnic or cultural backgrounds. And it's never good to define people as us and them. People are people, and we really need to start to appreciate diversity and break down barriers. And we believe that impersonal and identikit towns and cities rarely make good meeting places. We don't need more boring streets where nobody interacts with each other. We need places that encourage social outreach. And the best way to achieve that, we believe, is to let people meet and get to know each other in these spaces. And then another aspect is permission, which Steph touched on earlier. And this is really important to us, I guess, at Vestra with this Scandinavian approach and background that we have. And I chose this slide particularly because of the skateboarder in the background, in case you've missed that. So as the prevalence of private public space increases in the UK, and all of the aspects that go with that, CCTV, etc., many places are trying to create this feeling of safety by adding surveillance cameras, closing down parks at night, employing more police, adopting hostile architecture. And by that, I mean anti-skate measures on benches or armrests, which I'll explain later. And at Vestra, we believe that this may bring a sense of security, but it's completely false. So we consistently refuse to accept hostile designs and architecture. And the main reason for this is our stance on allemansretten, which is the Scandinavian right to roam. In Scandinavia, and also actually in Scotland, you can walk and move about almost exactly anywhere you want. There are very few trespass laws as such. And outdoor recreation is a massively important part of the national identity, and it's established in law. So you're free to enjoy the great outdoors as much as you like, as long as you pick up your rubbish, show respect for nature. And this same sense of freedom is applied to public spaces where citizens are free to act more or less as they choose. So if, for example, a community has homeless people sleeping in doorways or in parks at night, this has to be dealt with by politics and social services. It's not our task as furniture manufacturers to design outdoor areas with spikes and other obstacles. The only purpose is to keep the weakest members of our society away from our streets and off our seats. So we've been asked many times to supply benches with armrests in the middle purely to prevent homeless people being able to get onto them at night and sleep on them. And we always decline those requests. We believe in social and democratic design, and it's just not democratic to employ hostile design in our cities. And then lastly, climate. I've just got 3 points here, and I'm not going to dwell on this here because my following presentation at I think 11:30 addresses this in great detail. But as I mentioned, as the global population rapidly increases, we've got to learn to share these spaces better and better with each other. And in a few years, according to the United Nations, 70% of the world's population are going to be living in urban areas. We're not too far off getting to that now. And in terms of placemaking, this means we've got to start thinking differently about how we build our cities. and towns. Otherwise, it's going to be more people sharing less space, taller buildings, more concrete, more paving. And these bring problems that we're already experiencing today, such as poor air quality, urban heat islands, lack of biodiversity, and issues with both drought and flooding. As we know, we've got a man-made climate and resource crisis that we're facing. And although it's not too late to do anything about it, we're getting there. So please do watch my following presentation for more on all of this. So how do we address these issues? I'm just going to run through 4 projects very quickly because I'm just keeping an eye on the time. So excuse me if I sort of waffle through them, but these explain a little bit more about our approach. And at the heart of each are the people that visit, work in and live in each place. So first, Times Square in New York, obviously. And in 2010, a Norwegian architectural firm, Snøhetta, won a competition to redesign the area, which was finally completed 7 years later in 2017. And originally it was almost 80% trafficked. And now actually it's 80% pedestrianised. I'm hoping this video runs, it's a bit glitchy. But you'll see that the space has been given over to people and taken away from cars. It was an extremely difficult project. It took 7 years for good reason. You can see what a sort of mammoth change that was in the area. And it's very busy. Nearly 500,000 people normally pass through Times Square every day, not right now. So it's the world's most visited tourist destination. And it's a very hectic central hub culturally and commercially, and a great icon for New York, obviously. And it was the local BID, Business Improvement District, which is Steph's background, Times Square Alliance, who was behind this transformation, and they facilitated the installation of this furniture, which is ours, to bring people together. And actually wardens had to ask people to sit on it initially because they were so used to having to buy something from a local shop or cafe that they didn't understand that the furniture was there for everybody to just use. So that was a first really in the area, and it's a great democratic outcome for us and obviously the city. And on a totally different scale, this is a small area outside Southwick House, or the Barrier Block in Brixton, if any of you know of this. And we delivered this legacy project with the Brixton Design Trail back in 2016. And the brief was to create this small parklet at the entrance to challenge the notion that creating this space to dwell would increase antisocial behaviour, which was a big issue at the time. And instead that good design could improve perceptions of safety and empower a sense of well-being with the residents and visitors. And this space had been habitually populated by street drinkers and labelled an antisocial environment by both the residents and neighbouring businesses. And after extensive community consultation, and as Steph says, that is absolutely critical, we donated just a few benches that were installed to punctuate this space with communal seating. And it's totally changed the way this area is used. And it's an exemplar of how socially minded design can be an agent for social change and create spaces of community value. Bear in mind, we were initially told through the designers by the police that we shouldn't be putting seating here because it was going to create a hostile environment and encourage drinking and antisocial behaviour. And the residents actually were the ones that fought it and said, how much worse can it get? So totally different scale, but you can see how these improvements can be made. Oslo, just a quick review of this. Our cities historically have been planned around cars and vehicles that dominate spaces. But when you remove those cars, you allow other activities to take place for a more healthy and equitable place. And in recent times, many towns and cities are trying to design cars out of the urban landscape. Oslo is a bit ahead of the curve because about 5 years ago, their main objective was to remove all the parking spaces in the city centre and replace them with spaces where people could meet, eat outdoors, children could play, and tourists could wander freely. And so now they've removed almost all the parking spaces from the city centre, about 700, and replaced them with cycle lanes, seating and parklets, as you can see here. And these can be used by businesses and citizens. And you may not automatically think of this, but Oslo actually had a very major air pollution problem in the past because it's located in a bowl, and in winter, the city suffers from very serious air pollution. And so this was partly done to meet environmental and carbon reduction targets, and it's made a vast difference. The drop in cars in the centre has brought about a significant improvement in air quality. And then finally, a very quick one on parklets, which Steph mentioned previously. this one in London. And as I've mentioned, our streets are coming under ever increasing pressure because of this growing population and need to improve health and well-being for residents and visitors. And this parklet was installed a few years ago now, just off Tottenham Court Road, for about an 18-month period. It was a temporary one to test the reaction from visitors and businesses. Contained seats and planters which promoted biodiversity and also encouraged people to spend more time outdoors. And again, the BID and landscape architects produced a monitoring report to study the changes that were brought about, and all aspects were remarkably positive. There were really impressive improvements brought about in biodiversity through rapid colonisation of wildlife through the plants, and there was a 41% increase in self-reported well-being of people who were just passing by the area and using it to stop, chat or eat or work, and 100% total support from the businesses surrounding the scheme, hopefully proving the way and paving the way for permanent improvements to be made here in this very busy area of London. So that's a very rapid tour around a tiny part of what placemaking means to us and our company. I hope it's inspiring and has provided some food for thought when thinking about possibilities in Leamington and the surrounding towns. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Romy. That was so fascinating, so
Super
inspiring.
speedy.
We've all got to fly through this. It's such a huge,
Yeah.
huge topic. And we could do a whole session just on engagement, but this is, that was absolutely fascinating. And it's so inspiring seeing a company that's living and standing by its values. What you were talking about, hostile design, we've encountered some of those challenges in Leamington. And I'm absolutely right there with you. So now, without further ado, I'm going to pass on to Geraldine from the RSC.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, Romy. What a great conversation. So yeah, my name's Geraldine, she, her, and I'm newly Director of Creative Placemaking and Public Programmes at the RSC. I start you off with a picture of Shakespeare and we'll talk a bit more about him. So here he is in fireworks celebrating the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death in 2016 outside the RST. And I should say thanks very much for inviting me to be part of this, because it's great to hear everybody speaking, and I'm looking forward to more conversation. Stratford upon Avon is known, no doubt, to lots of you, but just to recap, I suppose, and to kind of highlight some of the particular challenges with Stratford. It's a population, it's a small market town. It's in the heart of England. It's got a beautiful riverside setting. It's a really gorgeous heritage town, as you can see. Pretty much the same as it was when Shakespeare walked the streets. It's got almost the same layout. So yeah, really interesting, beautiful place. It's got a population of about 40,000, but gets approximately 4 million tourist visits a year. So you can see how that really brings a different perspective to the town. It's known as the birthplace of William Shakespeare, and everywhere you look, there are statues of Shakespeare. There are, you can see him around you, and it pervades the town. When I first arrived in Stratford, I remember seeing the sex shop was Romeo and Juliet's sex shop. The toy shop was called Much Ado About Toys. The jewelers, Iago, the jewelers, and kind of shamefully, the taxi firm is called Othello's. So think about that one. But yeah, Shakespeare, really through the bones of the town. The Royal Shakespeare Theatre is the banks of the river. It's an incredible theatre. And it's been there since 1879. So there's kind of been 140 years of making Shakespeare in Stratford through theatre, let alone the other ways that Shakespeare's been made in Stratford. And I find it really fascinating that in this small market town, there's a major international theatre on the banks of the river. And I quite often reflect how the theatre kind of tips the town towards the river. It feels like you've got this, almost like the weight of the theatre. I started at the RSC just over 10 years ago, originally towards the end of what was called the Transformation Project, to reimagine the theatre and to really reimagine the relationship between the artists, the actors, the companies and the audience inside the theatre. So bringing them closer together, remaking the main theatre space beautifully, but also rethinking the relationship of the building, the company to the town. So the theatre used to feel very cut off from the town. You've got this amazing kind of 1930s facade that is, you know, a great brick facade that felt closed to the people of the town. So what people tried to do, the architects tried to do through the transformation, is to open that up with the big new glass tower, the big colonnade, the glass colonnade down the side of the building. So opening the building up so it felt like literally more visible to the town, but also with the creation of my team, as was the events and exhibitions team, to think about our relationship to the community. And over the last 10 years, we've really thought about how we bring the community into the theatre. And we've done that through a range of kind of amazing projects, collaborations with amateur theatre makers, the famous co-production of Midsummer Night's Dream, where the amateurs around the country got to play the amateurs in the show. Just having a daytime offer, so the building used to be closed. It used to be that you arrived and you went to see a show, you know, really think about how we can bring families and people into the building in the day and engage them. So that was a lot of our focus when the building first reopened. And I'm really proud to say that, you know, we built a really loyal daytime audience so that the building, you know, had as many people coming to enjoy it in the day as it did coming to see shows, Shakespeare or otherwise, in the evening and at matinees. So we built that audience. But what we've been starting to think about over the last few years, and what we really can, as everybody said, more importantly now than ever in the context of the pandemic, think about, is how we use placemaking. So just to highlight a couple of things that we did that have got us to this place. So in 2016, again, we worked with the brilliant Slunglow Theatre Company, who, if you don't know, do Google them. They're doing amazing work in Holbrook in Leeds. And we asked them to create a portal to the fairy world. So in Shakespeare's time, people believed that at midsummer the fairies came out and they created mischief and havoc. So it was a bit more like how we see Halloween now. And what Slunglow did is they came to a garden by the river in Stratford, and they built an amazing fairy portal camp. And with the community, they created that camp over the week. So people came and ate free food with the theatre company every day. We did, you know, we danced together, we played together, and we made a piece of theatre together over a week. And it was a really incredible, beautiful process to open us up to think about how we could engage with different people. We did a project at the other side of the theatre on the Bancroft Gardens, which we called Inside Out. So we took some of our theatre making techniques out, and we built this beautiful little theatre called the Swirl, which is inspired by a crinoline that you might wear on stage. So the big skirt. So it was like a big skirt outside the front of the building. And weirdly, it doesn't look huge in this picture, but it is absolutely massive. So you could really see it from a long way away, and it was really, really compelling for audiences. We also surrounded it by lots of interactives that were really just basic ways to engage with Shakespeare. So, for example, we had a Montagues v Capulets table football game. Really thinking about kind of completely, you don't need to know anything about Shakespeare, you can just enjoy and have fun. And that was a really successful project that brought thousands and thousands of people to the front of the building who wouldn't normally come inside, who we sometimes don't see coming to see our shows. So it was great to have that. Oh, ironically, pre-pandemic, we were going to launch the creative placemaking program. So it's great to get here now as we're starting to hopefully see some seeds coming out of the pandemic. And I'm working with my new team to think about creative placemaking more broadly in Stratford, how we do that, how we engage with the community, as everybody else has talked about, how we build from the grassroots up to think about what the community needs, and how a complicated town like Stratford, with all those visitors and lots of people who live and work there, how we can really bring people together to make a brilliant, brilliant place. And I realise time is running out, so I want to end by just touching on a couple of the projects that we're going to be working on. So briefly, that's our purpose, which I've just really talked about, and our mission and vision, which we've been spending some time thinking about. But yeah, just to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're going to be doing. So we're starting a Kindness Rocks project in Belcourt, which is in the middle of Stratford town. We're taking over a shop unit and thinking about how anybody can come along and enjoy painting rocks, doing something creative, expressing themselves in whatever way they want. You might have noticed that in our mission and vision and purpose, we don't say Shakespeare. So it doesn't have to be about Shakespeare. And that feels quite radical for us to be thinking about creativity in a really, anybody can do it. This can be anything. And it might lead you to engaging with Shakespeare. But you know what, if it doesn't, that doesn't really matter. Just, find a way to express yourself and find a way for us to make place together. And again, something that Steph said, so it's going to give us an opportunity to be in the town, to observe who's making work, how they're making work, what kind of people are coming to Belcourt, what do they want. We'll be able to talk to people and engage with them. We're working with the brilliant artist Sadia Hipkiss, who's come to Stratford lots, so knows the town, has spent time on the Bancroft Gardens hanging out by the river. So it's going to be great to bring her along with us to think about how we make new work together. And also the building on the right is our new costume workshop. It's finished as a capital project. It's not yet open to the public. So we would have been opening that to the public, welcoming tours. But what we're thinking about now is about engagement programs. How do we work with people to think about the craft of costume making and different ways of engaging with costume and with the heritage of the RSC. So it's going to be great to have that project that we can engage communities with, and we can use that as leverage to talk about things that will, we know that costume making excites people, that it's something that you can really get to grips with. So look out for new projects happening around Stratford. You might not realise they're the RSC at first, but come along and enjoy and talk to us and let us know what you want to experience. Look forward to answering questions later, and thanks very much, Steph.
Wow, thank you, Geraldine. What an absolute pleasure to hear so many wonderful emerging ideas around how the RSC is going to be creatively exploring that relationship between town and the wider community. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that evolves, and wish you all the best with that. And hopefully we can learn from some of these wonderful ideas as well. So last but certainly not least, I'm going to pass you on to Martina from Creative Leamington. Now, Martina and her counterpart, Chris, are so modest, but so brilliant. In a short time, they have been doing incredible things in Leamington, as she's going to give you a little glimpse into. And just personally speaking, I can't say enough how much they have just invigorated my excitement for the town, but also already in the projects they've delivered have taught me some really valuable lessons around placemaking and how we look at our places, how we support each other to deliver placemaking in our places. So over to you, Martina.
Thanks so much, Steph. First of all, let me say I'm really, really honored to be here speaking on this panel with some really impressive organizations. We are a very small organization, so I'm really, really pleased to be able to be here and just say a little bit about what we do. I'm here as specifically to talk about a project that we did last year in collaboration with Bring Contemporary Arts, which is called Paint a Yard. But before I go a little bit deeper into it, I wanted to just give you an overview about who we are and what we do, because that really influences the way we understand placemaking and we work with placemaking. So we are a young and dynamic organization led by myself and my husband, Chris. We met while working with the local dance company called Motion House. He still works there full time, which is quite challenging for us. And I now have retired and I work full time on Creative Leamington. But what do? We produce and manage cultural events and projects, engaging people and places, and we write, curate and create cultural programs to engage the creative community and the wider community and the wider general public. And we provide platforms for young creatives to showcase their work. Now, why do we do it? We recognize that there are a lot of talented creatives in Leamington, but we felt that there is a lack of visible platform for them to show their work. We have identified that youth and fringe culture and subcultures are at the heart of any place that has become synonymous with having an exciting and creative energy. And therefore, we really wanted to encourage these and create events and opportunities that are stimulating and engaging for young and emerging creatives, as well as the general public. So here are some of the work we've been doing. 2 years ago, we started with Creative Mornings, which is our monthly breakfast lecture series for the creative community. Why did we start this? We knew that there were a lot of people and creative people working in creative organizations and a lot of freelancers working in the creative industries around town, but we didn't know where they were and what they were doing and how they were meeting up. And we really craved that connection. So we started Creative Mornings as an opportunity to give the creative community and the larger community an opportunity to meet and talk about creativity. So our strapline is everybody's creative and everybody's welcome. So as much as we say that this is a lecture series for the creative community, we think that everybody's creative. So we really welcome everybody that wants to experience creativity and wants to talk about creativity and want to connect with more creatives to really join the conversation and be part of the conversation. But we created a quite a big community quite quickly. We had about 300 people creating a profile on our website and coming to the talks. And we started to think that we wanted to collaborate with some of these creatives. So here is the Frontline project. We decided to collaborate with Danny Coyne, an artist living in Leamington, because we were in the first lockdown in the pandemic, and we wanted to create a statement to really remember this time. We wanted to create a tribute that was long lasting about our key workers. So we collaborated with Danny Coyne, who created these amazing visual drawings. And we created a website where people and local key workers could send their pictures and stories and really tell their experience of the pandemic. But also, we didn't just want to have this as a digital platform. We wanted to have a long-lasting tribute that was really visible in the town. We really wanted to create a mural that was there for the public to enjoy and witness, and for the public to really take ownership of. Of course, when you talk about a large mural, there's always difficulties. We started trying to figure out a way of putting it up somewhere. We tried so many different avenues, and then we found a private owner that was happy to have it in Spencer Yard. And we knew that it was great, but it was a little bit tucked away. So we wanted to create a bigger event around this so that we could raise the profile of this mural, and while also raising the profile of street art in Leamington, because it was already really visible and Bring was doing already great work. But we wanted to kind of come together and bring this energy around street art together. So Paint a Yard came about, which I will talk a little bit more in details in a minute, because the last thing we've been doing, which we did last December, was that we transformed a unused empty retail unit in the Royal Priors into a gallery and a shop and a shop front for 12 local young makers to showcase and sell their work using QR technology. we knew that these artists needed visibility. There are not a lot of platforms for up and coming young artists to sell their work with a real presence in town. Yes, all these artists sell their work on Etsy or on Facebook Marketplace or on Instagram, but we wanted to give them a real presence in the town, because we felt that if their work is visible, their voices are visible, their voices are heard. And that's a massive part of what we do, really bring the voices of people and their work out for the public to enjoy. So about Paint the Yard. So Paint the Yard was our collaboration with Bring Contemporary Arts that turned Spencer Yard into a vibrant open-air gallery. We really wanted to reintroduce Spencer Yard as a more creative and playful space where the public could engage with some jaw-dropping street art and contemporary murals. And we knew that the Creative Quarter was coming up, and Spencer Yard is part of a big redevelopment as part of the Creative Quarter. So we wanted to do something that would bring some excitement and would bring some color to the area before the redevelopment was going to kick off. So we worked in collaboration with Brink that commissioned 3 artists to do different murals around the yard, and we culminated these with a free street art exhibition for the public in September 2020. So here are some of the examples of how we changed the space. So this is the Crown building. You can see a before and after kind of effect. The building on the right was completely repainted by Laura Nam, an artist on the Brink collective, to keep the idea of the camouflage alive, but take a real young and edgy way of transforming the heritage of that building and change it quite considerably, I say. And then we knew that we had another 2 walls, and we knew that the peregrine falcons are a really big feature in Leamington Spa. And so they came up with the peregrine falcon, and then with the pigeon alongside it. And then, of course, we found a space for the Frontline Project mural to come to life. So the whole of that car park that was disused and, quite frankly, derelict, had a complete makeover. So then on September 20th, 2020, we unveiled the revitalized yard alongside some mounted work from Brink's collection. So we brought out some work that Brink already had, and we mounted it, and we created a virtual self-guided tour that audiences could embark using QR code stickers. The tour gave attendees an insight on the history of the site alongside information about the artist. And to do so, we commissioned a video in collaboration with Leamington History Group and created feature web pages for each artist with their biographies and more of their work. And the event was also part of the Heritage Open Days and attracted 250 plus people. Now, I have to say, this was all during COVID time. So the event was pretty challenging because we had to schedule, I think, 6 people every half an hour. But we were able to give a possibility for the audiences and for the community to come and experience what we were doing in a safe and social distance way, which was a real big challenge, but we managed, which was really important for us. So these are a little bit of the stats that we had around the event. As you can see in the next slide, Leamington was one of the most involved cities, but actually we were able to really bring people to see this project from further afield, and the majority of people also came from Coventry, which was great for us. So a little bit about what we learned from this. Paint the Yard was a huge learning curve for us, and really established our relationship with our wider audience and with key stakeholders in the town. And really, I think relationships are a huge part of transforming a space or creating a new one, as far as we're concerned. So relationships on this project were really about so many different people. It was about engaging Brink and its artists. It was about engaging and liaising with local authorities that were really supportive around helping us with all the hurdles and permissions and all millions of things that you have to do in order to pull off something like this. It was the project that really established a relationship with Stephanie and Bid Leamington. She helped us greatly with rolling the event because she had done events before. So she was a real important person to bring along to the project so that we weren't gonna make many mistakes that we would have made if we were just going a day alone. And of course, we had to engage the businesses inside the yard. We brought them along with us. Heartbreak, Alan Heat from Purple Monster, Love Theatre, they all gave us something, gave us some help through this project, and the businesses around the area of Spencer Yard, because when we're thinking about creating an event, how do we bring the wider business community to work with us? So we gave them an opportunity to give voucher and discounts, and we publicized their involvement in the project so that they could share this project with us as well. And of course, private landlord, like we said, they gave us an opportunity to put our Frontline project mural up. The Creative Quarter, who became a sponsor. The creative businesses around town that started to engage with us and wanted to help. For instance, Mark from Coral Color is now part of our wider connections, and he always helps us out when we have to do something graphic. And of course, the community. So relationships are fundamental, and were fundamental for us because we wanted to take risks. And we also had to work at speed. So we really wanted to make a big, bold, impactful piece of art. So we had to take risks, but we didn't take risks without the support of our stakeholders. We brought our stakeholders close together so that they could help us in the direction, they could advise, and they could really feel that they were part of the bigger picture. We really think that it's important to make big, bold pieces of public art, and we really believe that audiences are ready and want these big and bold and energizing pieces of public art. So we know that this created a big buzz around the town. We felt it, and how we did that was also by making the larger community part of the making of it. And we did this by using social media very, very well, because from the beginning, we shared our process with people, and we were working a really open space. So people started trickling down and coming to see, and we were there talking with them and explaining what we were doing. And the community really supported us. So they were curious, they were engaging from the beginning. When the walls weren't even fully painted, they were half painted, it wasn't sure what we were doing really, they were coming to the yard and saying, yes, guys, this is amazing. Yes, keep going. And they were asking questions. And that was a real reminder that there is an appetite for public art. There is energy around these kind of statements, and they don't have to be permanent. A part of what we were doing, we knew that this area was going to be redeveloped. We were really clear, both us and Brink, that possibly this area was going to be redeveloped very quickly, and some of these, if not all of these murals were going to go, and that was okay for us, because we didn't know how fast this was going to happen. And sometimes you just have to do things for the time being. Sometimes you just have to do things because it's important to do them and to give people some engagement in art, and bring them with you on a journey. So we have seen loads of follow-on activity. We've seen photo shoot, music videos, dance videos, requests to do documentaries there. And it has become a place that before was a car park, so almost a kind of like a non-space in a way, if I may say so, into a place that has real identity, that is instantly recognized by people around town and further afield, and that people have taken ownership of it. The amount of people that have a picture in Spencer Yard as their profile picture on social media, it's so heartwarming. And there are a lot of places like this that don't need to be made from scratch. they're just there to be reimagined. They're just there to be transformed. And that brings me to what's next for us. So as I said, we did Lit Market in December, and we had great success with it. But we only used one shop, one empty retail unit, and we could only give an opportunity to 12 artists. And we wanted to expand on this. We wanted to make sure that we could give more artists a possibility to showcase their work, but also we didn't want to just use empty retail units. We wanted to use windows of businesses that were already established, so that coming out of this pandemic, we could get together and kind of help each other up in the rebuilding of what the future, the next future will be. So Creative Leamington has recently received funds from Warren County Council for an innovative arts festival, which will take place in the town later this year. The project will see reopening shops, hosting local up-and-coming artists, work in their windows, as well as empty units being used for installation pieces. The festival will use an interactive map of Leamington Town Centre, linking the public to the art installation and offers from participant stores. And LIT has also longer-term plan to include other cultural events, COVID permitting, such as performance, music, and film, and aims to bringing entertainment and excitement to the high street when lockdown restrictions are eased. And this is really important to us, to bring life and bring young people into the town and making them part making them part of the experience of the town center, and helping them by pairing them up with existing businesses that might be already established. So kind of like an opportunity to really raise each other up. Thank you very much.